Hello my friends and welcome to my channel. I hope you all are doing well and having a great day. In today's video, I want to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about how I almost died in 2019 and how I recovered, sort of. I hope my story helps you, and maybe if you have any health issues that are similar to mine, maybe the experiences that I've had and the results and the treatments, etc., 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 help you on your journey to wellness as well. If you find this video helpful, please be sure to click that thumbs up button so YouTube knows to share it with the rest of the world. So anyway, let's dive in. It was 2019 and it was a rough year. I almost died, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it felt like hell. I started out the year just kind of going up and down emotionally. My mom had just died a few months prior. She had passed away in August of 2018, and it was this long drawn out experience where I had to take care of her. She was on hospice. I had been going through all the angst and all the emotions leading up to her passing, to having that grief and just kind of not knowing how to grieve necessarily in a way that was conducive to me still being okay. I poured myself into my work and to projects, and I literally closed on my condo about a month after my mom had passed away. So at that point, I was fully engaged and fully into getting my house set up, and my full-time job at my previous employer was to do content, and I was finding reasons to travel to clients and film them with our studios team and to do all of this video content and all these things and all the things, and working 80 hours a week just so that I could fill a void in missing my mom. Over several months, I noticed myself just getting really tired, and I chalked it up to me just overworking myself. So I fortunately worked at a company where if you were a salaried employee, you got something called DTO. With that term, it means discretionary time off. It meant that we could take as many days off as needed as long as we had approval by our manager if there was anything above a certain amount. But I had unlimited time off, basically. I had kind of not let myself use my vacation time as much after my mom had passed away because I had taken off so much time from work to take care of her. We had 6 weeks from getting her diagnosis of the stage 4 cancer to her passing, and then everything after that, and getting her house and apartment cleared out, to dealing with probate and dealing with bills and all of that stuff. It was a lot. And then I moved and bought my house within a month of that, and just had to kind of deal with that, and living on my own for the first time in over a decade, and so much to take in. So anyway, I felt myself getting really tired and just lethargic, and at the time I was going through a lot of health discoveries, a lot of medical testing, because I would have bouts of lightheadedness and I would start blacking out, and my blackouts were not like bam, I'm fainting. It was more like I would get this weird narrow tunnel vision, and things around me would just start getting blurry and dark. And then before all that would start happening, I'd get these weird like pinpricks in my arm, and it was like my nerves were misfiring, and I could tell that something was wrong because I would just start getting really tired and really weak, and I would just have no energy, and my arms felt like dead weight, and it hurt to even hold my arms up. And at that point, I knew I needed electrolytes in my system to kind of like recharge myself. And there would be times where I would be running down to my kitchen to get some Gatorade and a banana and some chips or something to get the salts and the potassiums back in my system, some liquid to get that moving throughout my system. And sometimes I wouldn't make it and I would pass out on the floor. There was one night where I woke up on the floor after, and I realized 3 hours had passed. I had been passed out for 3 hours on my hard, cold ceramic tile kitchen floor in the middle of winter. That was not fun, and it was very scary. And I realized then that I needed some serious medical attention. So I had been going to a neurologist here in Seattle who specialized in autoimmune disorders. For many years, it was suspected that I had maybe lupus or Sjogren's disease, although I didn't have the definitive markers in order to diagnose me with them. In other words, I didn't have the specific antibodies, which apparently is what you need to be able to be diagnosed with lupus or Sjogren's or whatever. I'd been referred to this neurologist from my naturopath, and she was doing all this testing on me, and she noticed that in one of the tests that they did, which was for ANAs. ANA is anti-nuclear antibodies. So an ANA is an antibody that attacks the nucleus of a cell, and you have more of them when you have an active infection or when you have cancer or some more serious illnesses. But when you have an autoimmune disorder, your antibody levels are high. An ANA test is a blood test that a rheumatologist or a neurologist or some sort of specialist will perform to measure the level of antibodies in your system. And they also have the lab look at these antibodies to see how they're patterned. So if they're speckled, meaning it's like glitter, then that means something. Or if they're in little pods or like little sections and they're kind of clustered around different areas, then that means something else. If they're just evenly spread throughout the body, then that's one thing. There's so many different ways to interpret that. For me, it looked like I had lupus, but I had all the symptoms except for the malar rash. A malar rash is kind of like this butterfly rash that appears on the face. It's this red scaly thing that shows up like through here. I have never had that necessarily, and I don't have the very specific antibody for lupus. But anyway, the whole point of me talking about this, I keep getting derailed and go off on a squirrel moment, was that I thought I was just getting sicker and sicker because of potentially developing into full-blown lupus and having some complications. My neurologist wasn't convinced wholly that that was what was going on. We looked at my titers. A titer is the form of measurement of the levels of ANA, of the amount of antibodies you have in your system. When they measure a titer, what they do is they take your blood sample and they dilute it into different parts. As they dilute your blood, they are measuring to see how much ANA is present in your blood as they continue to dilute it. If ANA is still present at a higher dilution ratio, then that means you're more likely to have autoimmune issues. And my titers were really high. My body was fighting really hard for something, and we didn't know what it was. I didn't have the antibody for lupus, so they couldn't definitively diagnose me with that. So I knew I had some sort of active infection or some sort of active disease, or my body was attacking itself. When you don't know if your body's attacking itself or if your body's attacking something else and you're just experiencing the symptoms of that, it's really scary. And I went through several months where I was not sure what was going to happen because I was getting more tired, more fatigued, weaker, and there are points in time where I could not get off my couch. I had called my sister and asked her, can you come and change my cat's litter box for me? Can you come feed my cats? Can you come and do these things for me? Because I cannot get off my couch. As soon as I get off the couch and I go use the bathroom, I'm immediately tired and I'm about to pass out, and I have to go lie down immediately after. I don't even have energy to get off the couch to cook myself dinner. I've been ordering DoorDash every night, and it takes everything I have to go get the order from the door. And there are times where I just left the meal sitting out for several hours because I just didn't have the energy to go get it from the front door. I was sleeping on my couch, which is downstairs. It was really scary, and I started thinking, well, since the doctor, the specialist who was the first one to diagnose me with dysautonomia and figure out what was going on with me, if she can't figure it out, why I'm so sick, then I might be dying and I need to take care of things. So I started putting my affairs together and trying to figure out, okay, what's going to happen with my house? What's going to happen with my pets? What's going to happen to my retirement fund and my assets and all these things? And then I went back to the naturopath and I was saying to her, man, I've just not been feeling so great. And she's like, okay, well, I can tell something's wrong with you. Have you been tested for mono? And I was like, no. And she's like, have you been tested for Lyme disease? I'm like, no, I don't think so. She's like, okay, well, we're going to test you for those. I'm also going to just have them do a full blood panel just to kind of see where your levels are with vitamin D, iron, etc., etc., etc. It's an extensive lab result. I should get this within a week or so, and I'll give you a call as soon as I get it. I'm at work the following week, and she calls me. And then I don't answer, and she calls me right back again. So I have 2 missed calls, and then on the third one, I noticed that my phone was ringing. I answered it, and she's like, hey, so I just got your lab results, and I need you to either come to my office right now, or you need to go to the hospital. And I was like, wait, why? And she goes, the lab called. They called me directly. Usually they don't. They just release it, and it's an email. They called me, and they told me that your iron is so low, you're in a fatal range. and you need either an iron infusion or a blood transfusion as soon as possible. And I'm telling you, if you can't come to my office right now for an iron infusion, you need to go to the hospital immediately and go get a blood transfusion today. You are very sick. Oh, and by the way, you have mono. You don't have Lyme disease. So shock, I felt like I was going crazy because I knew my body was shutting down, and I was trying to explain it to people. I was talking to my therapist about it, and I was saying, I feel like I'm gaslighting myself because I know like something's so wrong in my body. My body is shutting down and I can't explain it, and nobody can figure out what's wrong with me. And I feel like it's just up here in my head that I'm making this up, and I know something's so wrong, but like, how can it be wrong if no one can figure it out? I know I'm dying, and I feel like I'm over exaggerating in that I am making this up, and yet I feel so awful. My body is just so tired. How am I supposed to continue on living like this? Because I can't. This is awful. I can't live like this. And then to have my doctor call and say, yeah, there's something very wrong with you and you need to go to the hospital or to my office immediately. It was so validating, yet it was just that extra oomph of, oh my gosh, I am dying. And I'm so glad that I had a doctor who cared so much about me to call me immediately. And I did leave work and I went and got my iron infusion. I had multiple sessions with her, and then I had my levels checked. I had to make a lot of changes to my diet, and then on top of that, the mono wasn't helping. Mono, if you've everyone has the Epstein-Barr virus, with the actual number here of people carry this virus, and usually it lies dormant. When it becomes active, that's when it becomes mono, or what people colloquially call the kissing disease, because it's usually spread through bodily fluids like saliva, sneezing, that sort of stuff, coughing. My brother had mono, and I remember him being so sick when I was little because he had mono and he had lost so much weight. His spleen was having issues. So mono is a pretty serious thing, and it usually takes a person about 2 to 3 months to recover from it. It's like a really bad flu, really bad, and your body hurts and you're tired and you've got a lot of flu-like symptoms. But unfortunately in that time you just got to let it run its course because it's a virus, and it's not like you can take an antibiotic for it. That's just not how that works. However, given my situation and how poorly I was doing, and that I was actually on the verge of death with anemia, severe anemia, my doctor did prescribe me some Valtrex. Valtrex is an antiviral medication. I was on Valtrex for about a month, and then she gave me an extra supply prescription just in case I started feeling symptomatic again, because I had a rare form of recurring mono. So it wasn't just a 3-month period in which I felt sick. I had gone through a 3-month period, a 3-4 month period where I felt sick, started to feel better, and then all of a sudden I got sick again and would feel a little better and get sick again. And it was cyclical. So for about 17, 18 months, I was in severe death-like sickness with the mono. So that was not fun. And then paired that up with anemia. I wanted to share some of the things that I've done in my life to improve my iron deficiency and make sure that I'm getting enough iron in my diet so that that kind of situation never happens again. So there are ways you can naturally increase your iron intake. Obviously, you'll need to talk with your doctor and see what works for you and what they suggest, because if you have allergies or if you have severe diet restrictions, some of these things may not work for you. If you're gluten-free, the things that I did may not work for you. One of the first switches I made was to cook with a cast iron skillet. My mom always had a cast iron skillet, and I actually inherited one of hers after she passed away. So I started using her cast iron skillet, which was also kind of an ode to, I have these memories of my mom using this pan and it made me happy, on top of thinking I'm now infusing a lot of my food that I'm cooking in this pan with additional iron. So that was one of the first and easiest changes that I can make for myself, was to use a cast iron skillet, because it just adds some iron to your food naturally without you having to do anything or add supplements. Obviously, taking supplements is another thing. I started taking supplements, but the thing is, you can't just take an iron pill and call it good. You can't just take it with a vitamin and call it good. You actually need vitamin C or ascorbic acid to help you digest that and for your body to process it. So something like orange juice or even berries is a really good option. One of the things I would do is take an iron pill in the morning with some, and then have some yogurt with some blueberries, some strawberries. If you get heartburn, or you've GERD or some issues with acid reflux, orange juice may not be the most inviting drink to have, especially first thing in the morning. For me, I needed something a little bit softer for my tummy, so I switched to having the berries. Berries have a good level of vitamin C. Citrus is usually preferred, and orange juice is easy to take with an iron supplement, but again, if you have a sensitive tummy, then berries might work better for you. One of the things that was concerning with adding more iron to my diet was the belly aches. Sometimes I would get belly aches after having iron, and I know a lot of people struggle with this too. One of the things I learned about iron supplements is that there's a version called chelated iron. The way that that breaks down in your body is a bit different, and it's gentler on your system. I'm not sure of the science behind it, but it definitely did make a difference in how my body was absorbing that iron, and I noticed way fewer belly aches from taking the iron supplements. So if that's something that you struggle with too, then I would recommend looking into chelated. Whole Foods is where I found mine. I feel like you could find chelated iron pretty much anywhere, but I found mine at Whole Foods, and it wasn't that expensive. It was maybe $12 or $13 compared to $8 for the regular iron, so it's not that much more expensive. And if you suffer with tummy aches, digestive problems, that might be a savior for you. Obviously, adding more meat and protein to my diet was great for multiple reasons, because my body does better when I eat more protein. When I first moved to Seattle 12 years ago now, yeah, it's been 12 years, I was vegetarian, almost completely vegan, and I felt really great for a long time, but then over the years I started having health issues, and then fast forward to some surgeries and digestive problems that I had, I could no longer be vegetarian because my body needed B12 from animal sources. B12 is a B vitamin that primarily comes from animal sources, so meat, dairy, that sort of thing. You can get synthetic forms of B12, and for most people it works just fine. For me, it did not. I couldn't absorb it, so I had to switch back to eating a meat diet. But I still gravitate and still kind of want to eat vegetarian. I'll eat meat on occasion. It's just not something I eat a lot of, and I prefer eating vegetarian meals. But that said, after I learned that I had severe anemia, I realized I was going to have to add more meat into my diet, and not just any kind of meat, but meat higher in iron. So more red meats. I don't know about you, but anytime I've been on a period where I'm just really tired, all of a sudden I'll just get this craving for red meat, like a juicy steak. And anytime I crave steak, that's a warning sign for me that I need iron in my system, because I rarely, if ever, crave meat. If I crave meat, it means I need the B12 or I need iron. I usually default to assuming iron because of the state I was in before, but I digress. By adding more meat to my diet, I felt a lot better. You know, I wish I could be vegetarian. I wish I could eat more vegetarian, but I definitely have to have those animal sources in my diet in order for my belly and my system to absorb things the way I need to absorb them. Unfortunately, synthetic forms of those things just don't work for me, and it took a long time to understand that about my body, that I'm just not meant to be vegetarian. That isn't to say that there aren't good sources out there that are vegetarian. It's just, you know, my body's weird. That goes into listening to my body more. As I said, when I have cravings for certain things, meat, then I know I need to eat meat in order to have the iron that my body needs to survive. Same with B12. If you've been around and you know me, you know I love coffee. I love coffee. It's usually the first thing I drink in the morning. I'll make myself a latte or an iced coffee, or even just a nice creamy hot coffee in the morning. It's just my delightful way to start the day. Coffee is a diuretic, meaning it pulls water out of your system and helps you flush it out. So you're not absorbing water. It's not good for you if you're dehydrated, and it causes dehydration. Your metabolism needs water to function, and when you're drinking coffee paired with you needing iron, you're not doing your body a service. So I kind of had to curb my coffee intake a bit. It's not hard to do, it's just frustrating because there are days where I want that second cup of coffee, and I limit myself to one a day so that I'm not over stimulating my body with excess caffeine or dehydrating myself even worse. And another thing about coffee is that the caffeine and the acids in it can prevent your body from absorbing the iron you're taking, especially if you're drinking coffee with your breakfast and you have your iron supplement. You should wait about 30 to 45 minutes in between them so you don't affect your absorption of the iron. I learned that pretty quickly from my doctor. My naturopath was explaining kind of digestive processes and how long I should wait in between eating something and taking iron and taking certain supplements so that I would get the most effective results from each one. So I found that to be interesting, and I do think it was helpful. And then finally, adding more whole wheat grains to my diet. Now, this is where it gets interesting because not everybody likes wheat cereals. Not everybody can have wheat. But if you look at different cereals, these healthy cereals in the cereal aisle of your grocery store, and you start reading the labels, you'll notice that anything with whole grain, whole wheat, tends to have higher iron levels in them. As you read labels, you'll need to pay attention to the amount of sugar that's in each cereal. Usually cereals that have additional things like oats or frosted sugary toppings have less iron and fewer vitamins in them. I try to aim for about 15 milligrams of iron per serving, less than 8 grams of sugar per serving, and a good amount of fiber per serving as well. If I'm low in iron and I'm anemic and I need to boost my iron intake, I have Grape Nuts and I have bran flakes and I have cream of wheat on hand for me to boost those levels up. Amazingly, these fortified cereals have 100% or close to 100% of your daily intake of iron. Imagine that. Now, when you mix it with dairy is another thing that can reduce the effectiveness of absorption in your body. But I feel like with such a high amount of iron that you're absorbing, if you have your cereal with berries or you have a glass of orange juice to go with your cereal in the morning, then I think you're okay. Or you take a vitamin C pill. So my body's a little weird when it comes to cereals and things like that. Anything that's a simple carbohydrate that dissolves into massive amounts of sugar in our bodies. I have to be very careful about how much I eat at a time because it can be overwhelming for my digestive system. I mentioned that I have dysautonomia. My dysautonomia affects my digestive system. So when I have a massive amount of sugar, my body is sending all of its resources to digest that quickly because it's like bam, 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 bam. And it's like fireworks, and an explosion of sugar in my body and all of the chemical reactions that it causes depletes my body of its resources, and I go up and down like a major crash, and that's one of the triggers for my blackouts. So I do have to be careful when it comes to eating cereals, especially if I don't pair that with protein. So something like yogurt or even a protein shake or just adding in some whey protein or something like that is really helpful for me anyway to digest that cereal and not cause any issues with digestion. I actually don't like grape nuts on its own. I like warming it up and eating it like a hot cereal. So I'm going to show you some clips here of me doing that. And I don't like the texture of grape nuts. I find them way too hard and crunchy and they hurt my teeth. So that's why I like it as a hot cereal. And just to make it a little bit more tasty. I also really love bran muffins. I haven't made bran muffins in a while, and actually now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, ooh, that sounds really good. So maybe my body needs some bran muffins. I love cream of wheat. My favorite way is just to add a little bit of butter with some brown sugar or honey and call it good and just add some fruit to it. I don't do anything special. So finally, I just want to wrap this up with talking a little bit about the medical intervention just to kind of wrap up my thoughts on that. Getting your iron tested is pretty easy, and actually I used to donate plasma and I used to donate blood, and if you just volunteer to do either of those things, they have to check your iron, and it's a really simple finger prick test that they do, and they just run it through this quick machine that separates out your blood, and they measure your iron amounts right then and there, and they can tell you if you're anemic or not. If you're slightly anemic, then it usually takes about a week for you to build that up, but if you're severely anemic, it can take more time depending on the cause. So it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor if you notice you're lethargic and you've had your iron tested, or you may not have had it tested yet, but you know you're just sluggish, you're tired. Get a good workup. do a blood panel, physical, just to rule out anything that could be going on. It could be as simple as anemia, or it could be more mineral deficiencies, because if you're anemic, then you might have a B12 deficiency. You might also have deficiencies in vitamin D and calcium and other important nutrients in your diet. So check in with your doctor and have those levels run. For me, what saved my life was having that iron infusion therapy. That was done through my naturopath, so a medical practitioner who is licensed to do that. One word of caution, and especially since we have a lot of med spas that are popping up everywhere that are advertising these claims that you can come get your wellness improved in these places, and they're giving out B12 injections, and they might offer infusion therapies and things to help bring your vitamin levels up or your mineral levels up. And I want to caution you very carefully to not just go anywhere for those services. There are people who have had botched B12 injections. B12 injections are just a shot, and you usually have it done in your rump, in your butt. I used to get B12 injections all the time through my naturopath. Don't go to just any place and pay, $150 for these injections, because if they're not using sterile equipment, they're not using sterile needles, and they're not sourcing their vitamin B12 from a good source, then you're at risk for infection, you're at risk for sepsis, you're at risk for dying. There's been some cases in the news recently where people have had botched B12 injections, so just be very careful. And anyone claiming to improve your iron through infusion therapy, do your research and make sure that you're going to a reputable source, a licensed practitioner or someone who's certified in it at the very least. It's usually best to have your doctor sign off on it before you do it, because you just don't know if that iron is coming from a good source or not. But iron infusion therapy saved my life. It was within an hour that I just started feeling a lot better. It was incredible how my body was reacting to it. I just remember thinking, wow, if my body is starting to feel better now, how much better can I start feeling in a month's time after the antivirals have started working? I've increased my iron levels, and I've increased my B12 consumption, and I'm bringing all my nutrients back up. And to be honest, once I did get that my iron back up to normal levels, I felt 100% better. I didn't need to be on Valtrex anymore, and the mono symptoms also declined, and I finally was able to recover from mono. I think they went hand in hand. Like, it could be a chicken and the egg kind of story, where the lack of iron in my system made it harder for my body to fight off Epstein-Barr virus, and therefore it was recurring in my system, or if the mono caused my system to be depleted of iron because it was fighting so hard and using up more of the resource than normal. I don't know. But all I can say is that I'm just very grateful that I had a wonderful naturopath who listened to me and actually ran the tests just to see if I had some weird anomalous medical condition that other doctors didn't think to test me for. And while I'm grateful that it wasn't a result of the lupus, that's still always in the back of my mind, where I have to be mindful of how I'm feeling, and I'm constantly kind of keeping an eye on my body's reacting, and I just listen to it. And that's the number one thing. Listen to your body. You know when something's wrong, and don't let any medical professional gaslight you into believing that you're wrong. Once you allow medical professionals to gaslight you for so long, you end up gaslighting yourself, and when you most need the help, you're not going to get it. You're not going to seek it out, because you think, oh, I'm going to go through this again, and they're going to tell me nothing's wrong, and it's all in my head, and it probably isn't all in my head, but I don't feel right. Everything's wrong. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Listen to your body. You know your body. And if you're not getting answers, you have to be your own advocate, and you have to go after and find new sources and get new opinions. Thankfully, we live in a day and age where you can do a lot of research online. Now, Dr. Google is not licensed, and you're not licensed to interpret all the medical data and studies, but it doesn't hurt to look into that. Connect with people on Threads and Twitter. or X, excuse me. There are a lot of medical professionals out there who have blogs and are kind of reaching out in a non-traditional way to educate people on different health issues, especially with vitamin and mineral deficiency, nutrients, and all of these things. So check into those resources because they're really helpful. That was how I almost died in 2019. And it was a very scary time for me. And the hardest part for me was knowing that my mom had just passed away and my family had just gone through that trauma, and that my own life was in danger, and that it wasn't just about me, it was also about my family. And I kept thinking to myself, I can't leave my sister and my brother alone. We just lost our mom. They can't lose me too. I have to figure this out. I can't leave them like this. I'm grateful I held on, and I'm grateful that my sister came and helped me all the times that she did, because she was a true lifesaver. She came and took care of my cat. She cleaned my house. She helped me off the couch. She helped me get upstairs into my bed. She helped me with a lot of things, and I'm so grateful that I have her in my life, and that, you know, I was able to rely on her for that. Anyway, if you've been diagnosed with anemia and you found this video helpful, or if you're feeling kind of crummy and you're looking for answers and maybe my story has helped you in some way, please let me know in the comments below. If you have any other suggestions outside of what I've suggested here, please be free to leave them here. I want the comment section to be a resource for anybody who's looking for information or has questions. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!